ovens, fryers, refrigerators, they're not really meant to be bounced up and down on interstates in some of these cities that have pretty tough roads. So as a chef in the film industry, you have to really be light on your feet. Hey, good morning. I'm Jim Hanna. I'm here with my brother, Joe Hanna. We're the two co-owners of Hanna Brothers Film and Event Catering Company. We're going to talk a little bit about our origins and the company and film catering in general. And thanks for being with us. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Jim.
So I thought we'd start off by going way, way back, talk a little bit about your upbringing and how you got into the food business and specifically film catering. Talk about that a little bit.
Okay, well, that's a good question. Lots of experiences there. We grew up in South Florida in West Palm Beach. Both of our parents worked. Our mother was a nurse. Our father was a maintenance foreman at Sugarcane Growers Co-op. So they were both at work. And I remember spending a lot of times with my grandparents after school. My father's side was Middle Eastern, and we called our grandparents Siti and Jiddi. And Siti was an amazing cook. She lived really close to us. And our grandfather grew all his own fruits and vegetables in his yard. I mean, his yard was this massive garden outside. So after school, I would go over to Siti and Jiddi's, and we would bake bread, we would cook, we would garden. So I was always around food. Siti loved to serve the family. She took homemaking to the extreme. There was always food at the house. All the boys always came over. You know, at lunchtime, there was probably 12 family members at the house. And at dinner time, there was probably 15 family members at the house every day. And on Sunday, it was probably 45. And I just loved that experience of being together with the family, eating food, cooking food, serving food. I was passionate about that. I chose my career path from a very early age to be engaged in food and service. And then on my mom's side, Maureen was Southern Irish, and she loved to cook too, and she was a fantastic cook. She was in Arkansas, so I didn't get to spend nearly as much time with Maureen and Hoy. But when we did, we were fishing and hunting and cooking, and Grandma was just a great friend to us. When she was in Florida, she'd take us on our paper routes. She'd take us fishing. We'd get up in the morning and make biscuits and gravy. She loved to bake. As I went through school, on the summers, we worked with our dad a little bit, but I remember always wanting to go work in the restaurants. I got involved in the restaurant trade at a very early age when we were living in Wellington, working in Royal Palm Beach at Indian Trail Country Club, Maiku Lakes and Country Club, Royal Palm Beach Country Club. I took a career path at a very early age to become a restaurateur, a chef, restaurant manager. So I was either in school taking restaurant management courses or at work, which I loved. He started as a dishwasher and then pantry and prep and garmager. I went to culinary school in West Palm Beach, got to go work at the Breakers, do an externship at the Breakers. Went to Palm Beach, opened up a couple of 2J's restaurant, which were very popular in the 80s in the area we were growing up in. And then me and my cousin, David, who was a contractor, started talking about opening up a restaurant. He would build it and I'd design it, and he would work there when he could, but I would own and operate it. And we did that. We opened up Two Cousins Gourmet Deli and Bakery in Jupiter, Florida, in the Indian Town Country Club, forget that. We opened up a gourmet deli and bakery in Jupiter, Florida. I forget the name of the plaza. But Jupiter, Florida, Burt Reynolds was real popular there. It's funny because he came into the restaurant when we were new, and he got a corned beef sandwich, and I guess he liked it because the next day some people came and talked to us about doing some catering at his ranch, and we started doing catering at his ranch, and we started doing some catering at his dinner theater. and we started doing some catering at his home, all through the restaurant in Jupiter. And then he started filming a movie there called BL Striker. And fortunately, the logistics of the filming was right next to where the restaurant was in Jupiter. So the caterer late at night sometimes would come knocking on the glass door at the restaurant. Nobody was open, but I would be in there catering something, baking something, making something. And when they ordered a second meal on him, he needed some help, he needed some food, and he kind of found me. It was Coast to Coast Catering at the time. And I started getting involved with Coast to Coast Catering, doing some catering on BL Striker. He owned Coast to Coast Catering. And I got to go on the movie set, and I enjoyed being on the movie set. He talked to me while he was on that movie about, joining his team and becoming a motion picture caterer. And I was enticed to do it. I wanted to travel. I didn't want to just be confined to the area and region that I was in. I wanted more exposure. I loved being around my family and the culture of food that our family had, and the passion about food and gathering and being together that our family had. But I wanted to be exposed to more. So I joined his team in the late 80s, went up to New York and started doing catering on Sex and the City and Sopranos. That was pretty much a full year. We worked in New York doing that for about 4 or 5 years, and then got some Disney work down in South Florida, a television show and series, The 100 Lives of Blackjack Savage, which you learned a lot on in Florida, because there was so much challenges with the weather, the ocean, the extreme heat, the amount of bugs, being on a boat, being on land, early calls in the morning when you'd be in the marshlands and it's 4 or 5 o'clock and you have a ready time of 6, and there's mosquitoes and bugs, snakes and raccoons everywhere, and you're the only one there as the caterer, and the oven's not working or the propane doesn't come on, or just learning the logistics of being a motion picture caterer and being exposed to a moving outdoor environment.
While Joe was studying culinary and working in restaurants, I was going to high school, and I started working with Joe basically when I was about 15 in restaurants that he was working at. He was nice enough to get me in there as a dishwasher or somebody that was cleaning the restrooms or whatever. And, I made a couple bucks as a kid, just to have a little spending money in my pocket. Fast forward to college. At this time, Joe had left the restaurant that he and David had started, Two Cousins, and he was full form into going after his film catering career. And I would come and work with him in the summers again to make a little extra money. So I was in college, and when we'd get a few months off for the summer break, I would go out and work. And first movie I ever worked with Joe on was Home Alone 3 up in Chicago, as he mentioned earlier. And it was cold. This was, I think, over Thanksgiving or Christmas break, where I had a week off, and I was like, Joe was like, "You want to make a couple bucks?" And I was like, "Sure." And he was like, "I've got big extras this week, so I need an extra hand." So I was like, "Yeah." So anyway, I fly up to Chicago to help him, and it's probably, I don't know, maybe 10 degrees something. There's snow all over the ground. So as soon as I get off the plane, I'm realizing this is a different world. And then I go to the hotel with him. I think I flew in Sunday morning, and then we had to turn around and work Monday morning. And of course, he had been there for weeks. And I get to the hotel and I go, "Joe, what time will you start and work tomorrow?" And he goes, 2 a.m. And I kind of laughed and, "What? Are you serious?" He said, "Yeah, 2 a.m."
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay, all right, 2 a.m." So we go to bed about, I don't know, 9 o'clock. And of course, I'm trying to get acclimated to it. I was not going to bed at 9 o'clock. But I went to bed at 9 and laid there probably till 10, fell asleep. 2 o'clock rolls around. Of course, I'm hitting the snooze button. Joe gets up and he's like, "Get out of bed." We're sharing a hotel room at the time. And he says, get out of bed. And I'm like, I kind of roll over and hit the snooze button. And I'm like, you ain't serious. I'm not getting up. And he goes, get out of bed. I'm not going to tell you this, but one more time, get out of bed. And so I don't think I did. I'm not sure if I did or got up. I think I just laid there for another minute. And then he goes in and gets this whole bucket cold full of water and throws it all at me. And of course, then I got up and I'm like, what are you doing, knucklehead? But we got up and we went to work, and that was the last time I was late for work. But it was a rude awakening. The hours are brutal out there. You're typically working 3, 4 in the morning till 5, 6, 7 at night, and it's a lot. But that was one of them. But I'll take that story to my grave. It was such a shock to get up at 2 in the morning. So why are we doing the podcast, bro? What do we want to accomplish here? What are we sharing? Obviously, we want to talk a little bit about our story and our origins, our backgrounds. I think, to me, also part of the catalyst to doing this was to share kind of some of our thoughts around the film catering industry, be a bit of a thought leader. To my knowledge, nobody else is doing this in the film catering industry. But I think it's important to share our side of what happens on films. Hopefully some production managers, producers might listen to this and might be able to gain a little extra insight as to the challenges we face and maybe how we can coexist with each other so that everybody wins. Those are some of the things I want to talk about. I think it's also important to share our story so that people kind of know who we are when they hire us, the kind of caliber of people they're getting, the work that had to happen to get us to where we're at, the passion behind the food. Nobody's perfect, but we try to make every meal our best meal. We try to make, we have a saying in the kitchen that you're only as good as your last meal, right? Because, we know that you could do every out of 100 meals, if you do 99 well and you do one bad, that you could still get fired for the one bad one. So those are some of the things that come to mind for me as to why we're doing this podcast. What else would you share there?
Our journey has been extremely impactful. Just the lessons that we learn, the relationships that we build, the understanding of teamwork, the understanding of the culture of being on a movie set, how to really take the wellness and the nutrition vital, just because of the conditions that everybody's working in, the importance of having the right nutrition, the right hydration. It makes such a big impact out on location each and every day when you have a team that's working, like you said. Most everybody is working from like 5 in the morning. We start about 3 hours before the crew does.
Again, I would work with Joe in the summers and make some spare money while I was in college. I got done with college. Joe was still continuing to do film catering with Coast to Coast Catering. I played in the NFL for a little while, was mostly a backup, but I chased the dream, and that was a lot of fun. But when I was done with my time with football, I went and worked with Merrill Lynch. I've got a finance degree and a computer science degree, and I thought that was going to be my path. But all the while, Joe was sharing with me. We talked pretty regularly. He was doing well. It was a tough job, but he was establishing relationships with producers and starting to make a name for himself. He was being requested on films. So Joe was doing that all the while I was in college, trying to build up his book, if you will. So when I was faced kind of with a challenge or a question, if you will, as far as my career path, Joe said, hey, I could use somebody to do the back end of things, contracts, insurance, negotiations, deal with HR, deal with the reporting. But to start here, I can't just pay you to do that. You have to come out and work on the trucks with me because we don't have enough there's not enough money in the kitty to pay someone just to do that. So you have to come out and learn to cook on the trucks and work with me. So long story short, I left Merrill and I went and worked with Joe, and we were working on the trucks together. It was just he and I against the world. We bought some hand-me-down equipment from another caterer. I think between the two of us, we had about $30,000 that we were able to, save and scratch and claw to get. Joe's got 2 kids he's trying to support, a wife he's trying to support. I'm just coming out of ball where I was making the minimum, and was definitely not flush with cash. So we're trying to just make our way, and the only way we know how to do it is just work really hard and try to outwork everybody. So that's what we did, and we bought some hand-me-down equipment. We got our first job. That was the Hunley, I think, was Joe's first job, but that was before me. And then I think you did it for about 5 years without me, and then I came on roughly something like that. So over those 5 years, he built his rapport. I come on, we start working on the trucks together, and we're going everywhere. We were in Los Angeles, we were in Boston, we were in Nova Scotia. We did a job down in the country of Panama, the Bahamas, Virgin Islands. We would go anywhere. As long as you could ship a truck or drive a catering truck there, we would go. And you got to understand, Joe and I loved each other, but we were working next to each other 100 hours a week. We were staying in the same hotel room. We were both had the same objective, but when you're around somebody that much, tensions sometimes flare. And we had a few come to Jesus talks where our mother would not have liked to have been on the truck. I'll just put it that way. She would probably would have not been real proud of her boys at a few of those discussions, but we got through it. And long story short, we did that long enough that where we developed a rapport and we built a book that was big enough where finally we had to have 2 films going at the same time. So at this time I had worked under Joe, and don't forget, I had worked with Joe since I was a kid in high school in restaurants, and anytime I had any spare time in school, I would go work with Joe too. So I was well acclimated with kitchens and what was involved and cooking. And when I was working on the trucks, right as Joe's right hand for several years, he was teaching me the whole while, but I still hadn't, been the leader on a truck. So when we finally got to the point where we got 2 movies at the same time in different locations, well, now I had to go run a truck. So
2 really big movies.
it was, yeah. I was, if I remember right, I was in Virginia doing a project, and Joe was, I think, in Florida doing a project. And I would get on the phone with him every day. I probably called him at least 5 times a day, where I'm like, okay, what do I do now? What do I do now? What do I do now? Wait, the flat top's turning black. What do I do now? He's like, well, turn the heat down. So, it was simple stuff like that. But it took a little bit of, there's some nuance to working on these mobile kitchens, because again, equipment breaks, and when it breaks, you have to go to plan B or use a different set of equipment to accomplish the same goals. And he was great about not demeaning me or being ugly. He was always very good about trying to help and be successful together. And he knew I had the work ethic. I knew he had the work ethic. We both knew we wanted to succeed greatly. I think for me, one of the things that makes us different is, number one, you and I are very involved in the business. We're not hands-off owners. We're very, very involved. We want to see our teams do well. We're not into a job just to make money. We're into a job to build client base, build our book, build relationships, because we know it's not about one job. It's about 20 jobs, and reputation, along with delivering a product and keeping a crew happy. What we want to make sure is that the production manager is going to have a lot of calls, going to deal with a lot of problems. We want food to not be one of them, right? So we want once we get hired, the objective is for the production manager not to have any negative calls about the food. We just want that to be handled, and we try to make that happen for our productions we get hired for. I think our size also differentiates us from other film caterers, especially in the Atlanta market. We've got a 4,000 square foot commissary that we staff full time, that we run a restaurant out of. We also do events out of the back of. And so we've got a lot of resources at our disposal. If a production wants catering for the production office before they actually start filming or post filming, we're able to do that with drop off from our commissary. I don't know that other film caterers are able to do that.
I think the big thing that makes a big difference for us is the experience, understanding of hospitality and service, and being able to make the adjustments, because you really have to be able to make an adjustment on a movie set. You'll go from, feeding 100 people today and expecting to feed 100 people again tomorrow, to now we have 400 extras for tomorrow. So tomorrow we have, 500 people. You'll go from feeding 100 people today here at 1:00 to, no, we want to feed 100 people 5 miles away at 11 in the morning. Being able to keep a straight face and accommodate that. And sometimes it's an impossible ask. When you get an impossible ask, being able to say, yes, I can do that, but I need help with this. I need a state bed and a couple of drivers to help me start loading up the dining room so we can go over there and be ready at 11 o'clock.
So what we had to do, or what we decided to do, was diversify, and fast forward to now. And so we operate a restaurant called the Studio Cafe at Trilith Studios. We work in corporate catering in Atlanta, where we manage cafeterias for some pretty large clients up in the city. We're currently managing 3 of those right now, where they have employees. One of them has like 3,000 people a day at their facility. Another one has about 1,500, and the other one has probably 500 a day at each of their facilities. And we're serving them lunch Monday through Friday. We also do a line of products called Quick Takes, which are soups, salads, sandwiches that we work with local distributors on, and they take those products and they use them in micro markets, basically fancy break rooms, if you will, at some clients around Atlanta. And we also do disaster relief catering when the need arises, which is, typically we're going to help feed utility workers post-hurricane or windstorm or tornado storm. And we've also worked with FEMA related to disaster relief, where we've fed folks affected by hurricanes. Did I miss anything? All that's in addition to film catering. So when times are lean in film catering, i.e. like the last 18 months, where we're coming off the back of COVID, and then strikes by the WGA and the DGA, and then those get resolved, and then we're looking at strikes by the Teamsters and the IATSE folks. So, that has made for a lean amount of work in the film catering world over the last 18 months. So I know there is some work out there, but it's been pretty tight. So the fact that we are diversified and have other avenues has allowed us to weather the storm. And it's also allowed our employees to have other ways to earn, so that their families can have a check, and they can weather the storm with us. So I think that's definitely one of our strengths. So we're going to wrap up today. Appreciate you guys listening to us share stories and talk a little bit about our journey along the way. Hopefully you found this interesting, and we've got a lot more to talk about in subsequent episodes. Thanks.